Casas, my man. How's it going, brother? How are you doing?
I am fired up because I am so excited. I cannot wait to hear what you have to rant about this morning.
Listen, I don't have a lot.
My whole life now revolves around everybody asks me, what do you think Joe's going to rant about on Saturday? I said, who knows? Who knows?
Man, that means you got to get out more. I'm telling you right now, that's just the way that it works. I was rushing around trying to get myself ready to go today. I got in late last night, and I'm so excited to talk. I'm so excited to see you. That's like, what does your shirt say? Stop this. What does your shirt say? No, seriously. What does that?
I don't know.
Stop it. I just need you to stop it right now. Hold on a sec, please. Do not. It says, does your shirt? Oh my god. Oh my god. Jimmy, does your shirt say Awesomeizer?
I believe it does, Joe. Awesomeizer. Joe, there are enough awfulizers in this world. We don't need any more awfulizers, but we could use a little bit more of a dose of some Awesomeizer.
Can I tell you? First of all, it's not a word. And so I can't even tell you if it's spelled right because it's not a word. Like usually if you look at a word, you're like, well, that doesn't look like it's spelled right. I don't know if that's spelled right. It's not a word. And I don't know. And then it's got the T in the middle, like you're Mr. T. What is going on? I just like, and I'm guessing, please tell me that a group gave this to you, that you didn't build this shirt by yourself. Please tell me that.
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay.
Staff had this is their staff shirt when I showed up to speak. So, of course, they were generous, Joe, and wanted to give you this gift. Talk about how they were all going to strive to be Awesomizers this year. And Joe, after last week's comments about the weddingizers and all that, I thought, you know what? I'm just breaking it out for you.
Can I tell you something? You are the fall of American education. This is the problem right now. We got people blasting educators across the country for what they do, and you're out here making up words and they're putting them on shirts. This is the problem, Jimmy. You could very well be the fall of American education, and this is the reason why. Because all of a sudden they love what you say, but you can't have it. Like you can't, Jimmy. You can't have it both ways. You can't be out here telling people how to lead and then making up words. It's like you can't do both. You got to be one or the other. You got to be accurate or you got to be inspiring. You can't just be both by making up words along the way, because this is what happens. Now they put them on shirts. People are walking around. They see somebody, they see you at Walmart with an Awesomizer shirt on, and they're like, that's not even a word. Where'd you get that? And they're like, well, I got this from a school staff. A school staff in a school? That's not even spelled right. And then all of a sudden, now we're stuck. This is the problem, and you're the problem. This is the issue right now. I'm just going to tell you right now.
Frank, jump on here right now.
I'm not done. You can't just start talking.
Words, everybody. Let's give me some new words. I want to hear some new words. I'll put those in a picture next week, too, for you.
There are no new words. No. This is unbelievable. I got nothing.
All you got to do is add IZE to it, and we're good to go.
That's what it is? Okay, well, I'm going to talk eyes here for a couple seconds if you don't really mind for just a second. Maybe we can but seriously, it's not even a word, Jimmy. Gosh, you have to be kidding me right now. I mean, it's they lean into you, Jimmy. They lean into you. They're like, oh, it's Jimmy Casas. It's Jimmy Casas. You're making up words.
I was at the courthouse yesterday, Joe.
Of course you were, Jimmy. Of course, it's about time, actually. Now that I think about it, that's the only thing that you've said in the last couple of weeks that has been accurate. That's exactly what should be happening right now. And there's more. There's more. Of course you were, Jimmy.
I wanted to change my name to Jimmy Casasides.
You know what? I'm going to at this point, that's just the way that it works. And guess what? You know what you do? If you change your name to Jimmy Casasides and put it on a book and wrote a couple things in it, you probably sell 100,000 copies of it. And then you put more t-shirts. That's just the way that it works.
Did you see Chuck Moss's comment?
Yeah, Joe's rant-eyes. He thinks rantastic. At least it wasn't rant-eyes. If it was rant-eyes, then we would have a real problem.
I love me some Chuck Moss.
My gosh, man, I'm telling you right now. And good on them. I love it. I actually do like the shirt. I mean, if it didn't have like the word Awesomizer on, I'm like, okay, I'm good. Because I'm guessing the T has some indication.
It's the school, yes. So.
Yeah, that is so cool. It's very cool. And I like the color. It's a very cool shirt. right? Like I'm sitting here. Look at this. Where am I? Like I gotta get this. There you go. I got my Every Action Matters here, and you're sitting out here with like fake words.
That's right, buddy. That's right.
My
Hey,
God.
it's pretty tough. I don't know. I'm a little nervous. I don't know why they keep putting the Hawks on national TV again tonight.
Yeah.
Why? I don't know. But
well, everybody loves Iowa. I mean, they love Iowa. They love to see Iowa get beat. Here's a really interesting thing about Iowa to me. I see when I was watching. Well, the Packers just struggled on Thursday. That's fine, and it's fine. Too. It's gonna be fine. But the number of Iowa players on that field, the number of Iowa players on Sundays and Thursdays and Mondays, you would think Saturdays would work out a little bit better. Let's just be honest about it.
You never see any wide receivers out there, but you will see a lot of linemen and defensive backs, and you'll see that. So tight ends. So
yeah, I agree. I agree, man. I'll tell you.
Those boys are there's some big boys out there playing.
Yeah, for sure. And the Van Ness kid is good. So anyway, so we can get into a lot of that stuff. But one of the things that kind of hit me over the course of the week, I was able to work with 4 groups this week, and we're getting to that point in the year. It's September, and people shouldn't be tired yet, but at the same time, we're tired. And I think a lot of times it's that whole concept that we run so hot with all this adrenaline, and then the adrenaline drops off, and now we're stuck with what process we've put into place moving forward. And a couple of things hit me this week that were that way. You could almost see it in their eyes, and at the same time, they were so excited just to connect with each other. And I think that's the biggest thing that I think people miss out on is when you get into that drop in terms of adrenaline in a school and you're 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks into it. I think the first question that we should ask ourselves as leaders is, how often are we getting our group back together because of the excitement of the beginning of the year? But how often are we getting them back together so they can reconnect with each other? That's not directed around some, PBIS initiative or some curriculum initiative or, some evaluation initiative. How often are we just getting them back together just to talk? And I think when we got together, this week and the groups that I had, 2 of the 3, one was actually it was the state organization of nurse leaders, which is a whole nother conversation. I'd love to talk to you about that. But with the 3 school groups that we got together with, you could just see once they got together, they were just like, they were smiling and laughing and connecting with each other, because it wasn't like another level of, okay, so we're here to talk about this, or we're here to make sure that we all are on the same page with that. And I understand that we have to do that, but how often do we just get together and talk and build each other up along the way? I don't know if you've seen that where you're going either.
Yeah, it's funny you said that, because as you were saying that, Joe, I was having a conversation this week also between with the superintendent, who was honestly a brand new superintendent walking into a district that was that's struggling a little bit, right? And anytime we have a transition period, I do think it creates all sorts of anxiety among staff. And I always think about it this way. So let's say you're a principal, or you're a teacher or a superintendent, whatever your role is in the district. When those individuals leave a district for whatever reason, doesn't matter if it was retirement, it doesn't matter if they were moving on and being promoted, it doesn't mean if they struggled and they were just replaced. We have to remember that these individuals, regardless of their performance, will have relationships with kids, colleagues, and other people in that school or in that district. And when that happens, those individuals, almost like they go through some sort of, I don't want to call it trauma because that might be too strong, but they go through an emotional movement and within them of going, what is going to happen now?
Right.
Someone I cared about is gone, right? And then there's the trepidation and anxiety of what it's going to look like when a new leader or a new teacher or a new colleague comes into the building. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's something that we always have to be really cognizant about. And I think that kind of plays into what you're saying, Joe, because we know that during a school year, there will be transitions of employees who come into the school who were not there at the beginning of the year. And I do worry about those individuals in terms of how we're onboarding them, how we're making them feel like they belong, and creating this connection, this culture where they do feel connected.
Right.
And we have to be really intentional on that. So I think anytime we have an opportunity to bring people together, I do think it's an opportunity to build community. And I do think that every meeting and every gathering should start with some sort of community builder, right? The reason that is, is because if it really is about connection, then we have to be really intentional in making those connections, because I think that connection is what allows people to really understand people's stories. And I think that's a great way then to create a culture of empathy where people begin to understand why people behave the way they behave. And we know that's because of their past experiences, right? We all have those experiences. And so it's really really on our part, especially as leaders, or especially in the classroom. If you think about it, teachers, we have 180 days, or
Right.
180 opportunities to make connections with kids in the classroom. And it isn't just with the teacher to the student, but how intentional we be in student to student.
Right.
And that actually makes even a stronger culture. So, and so when you started talking, I thought what you were going to talk about is the fact that, we know already 6 weeks in, 4 weeks in, or whatever, but sometimes I do worry about staff. And is this really a balance issue, right?
Mhm.
We hear this all the time, or is it really a boundary issue?
Oh,
And,
yeah.
and is that boundary issue because we haven't set boundaries? In other words, we say yes to everything. We feel badly. We think we're supposed to help, support, whatever, however we see ourselves. But I do think it's more of a boundary issue than it is a balance issue. And so how do we give people permission to say no in an organization to a task or to an event or to a job without making them feel guilty, or them not feeling like somehow they're not a good employee because they said no? And so I think sometimes we play it both ways. We tell people to take care of themselves, and then when they say no, we kind of awfulize them, right? We get disappointed and we talk about them like, hey, they're not supporting, they won't help, they never volunteer, they don't do this, they don't show up. Yeah, but you just said, right? You just asked them and told them to get permission to take care of themselves.
Right.
And so I think we're constantly in education, whether it's at the leadership issue or the district issue or at the classroom level, I should say, I think we're constantly sending mixed messages to students and to our staff and even to people who are in our profession, because we say one thing and then we behave in a different way. So I see it more as a boundary issue. So how do we create this culture of permission and give people permission to say no without feeling badly about it? And how do we honor that, recognize it, and maybe even celebrate it sometimes for saying, good for you. Good for you for going home for your family. Good for you for taking care of yourself. And then how do we determine what that looks like? So I think, again, it goes back to those relationships, and that's why those connections are so important, Joe.
Yeah. Well, two things. First of all, you lost me at Awfulizer. Like, you had me and I was in, and then all of a sudden you go with Awfulizer, and I'm like, well, just see, here he goes again. It's just so dumb. But and then you're like, it's like when somebody
tell me how you're really feeling this one.
It's like when you're trying to make a statement to somebody and you lead with, well, I was with the aliens yesterday. And then no matter what you say at that point, then everything you say is gone. So can you just please, because you said a lot of great stuff. And then you're like, well, we tend to be awfulizers. Just zip it with that. God. So, but you're right. You're 100% right. And I think what ends up happening, the problem that we have is what, and Travis mentioned it. Travis mentioned it in the comments. What modeling is so important. And what we model is what we get when it comes down to this work. But I think what we have, when you talk about giving people permission to say no, then you have to model what that actually looks like. And sometimes if they say no and you don't address the fact that they said no, then they start to wonder if they should have said yes. But if you say to them as the leader, I appreciate that, I totally understand, but thank you so much for considering it. And, and if there's an opportunity in the future for you to do that, then please keep that in mind. But I appreciate your perspective, and we'll figure out a different way to do it. It goes back to that whole concept of what are we modeling when it comes down to the connections that we have with staff. If we tell our staff that we need them to break away for the weekend and be with their family for the weekend, and then we're emailing them or texting them all weekend about stuff that's going on next week, you're essentially telling them don't get away from school, right? You're telling them like, you need to be on point all the time. So what are we doing as leaders to say, get away from your email? You're not going to get an email until Tuesday morning when you come back, or Monday morning when you come back, or whatever. But then the opposite is true as well. You also have to say to that staff, remember, if you send an email to an administrator, you're not getting anything back until Monday morning or Tuesday morning or whenever we're coming back. Because if you're going to model it, then model it. But don't just model it with a certain group of people. Don't just expect it with a certain group of people. And I think we as leaders get into this space where we're like, well, we're the highest paid person in our building. We're the highest paid person in our district, which means we have to make sure that we're on point all the time. But when you say that and you feel that, then you push that off on other people because you feel like you're always working, which means if you're always working, you're sending stuff out or you're making more work for other people. And that's where they get, I honestly believe that's where we get knocked down. And that's where we're like, you know what, it's just bad here, right? It'll be better somewhere else. So I'm just going to go somewhere else and it's going to be just fine. No, it's not. If you haven't built any capacity to lead, you're just going to go and do the same thing the next place that you go. So you have to, trust the idea that you can break away for a weekend. You can break away for a night and model what that looks like, but also model the follow-up with the people that you serve. So you're in this spot where when they do say no, you don't just leave it there and then go on and so here's the thing, Jimmy. If I ask you to do something for me and you say no, right? Well, the task still needs to be done. So I have to go find somebody to do that task. So a lot of times what people will do is they'll just go find somebody to do that task and not acknowledge the fact that the person said no, which means the person then feels guilty for saying no. If you address it with that person and say, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Hopefully you can help us out with the next one. Don't worry about it. We'll figure it out on our end over here. At least you've acknowledged in that space that they made a decision and they're not wondering what your feelings are on that follow-up, right? So if we're being transparent with people, we also need to make sure that we're communicating in a way that allows them to know that their decision, whether it was, in the direction that you want it to go or not, has value. That makes sense?
Absolutely. You know what I love about this, Joe, and I'm saying this for the people that are on today listening, and we say this all the time that we don't profess to have any answers, and it's not our job to try to fix all these problems because we can't either. But I do think that hopefully the reason this group comes together, it's an opportunity just to reflect and to slow down, right? And I'm looking at the comments, and we really appreciate it. And if there are topics that you want to just type in there and say, hey, what are your thoughts on this? What I love about this is when you're talking, I'm not kidding you, I think like 4 different thoughts came to my head, right? And when do we get to slow down just to kind of reflect on some of these things? Because I think at the end of the day, if we're going to get better, we just have to slow down a little bit and really reflect on the work that we're doing. And if we're not getting the results we want, then the question is, why aren't we getting the results we want? And we've talked about perimeter leadership and getting off the perimeter, but at the end of the day, a poor process is always going to result, or it's going to end up in a poor result, right? And so I think that's one of the things I love about it. And so I'm just going to be really transparent here. And I think everybody already knows this, but this is also a good opportunity for Joe and I to slow down. I mean, people ask us, why do we do the show? And we never know what we're going to talk about. We don't talk about it. We have no idea what the hell we're going to talk about. And it'll just go wherever it goes. And sometimes it goes by the comments that people make. And that's why we like the interaction, because it, triggers me to kind of think about something. And I kind of have to question myself. Am I doing those things? Right. So I'm going to try to kind of just touch all those things that you just said. But first of all, you talked about circle back, right? We've talked about the importance of circling back with culture, because it's investing time in people. And there's no greater way to say to someone we care about them than to invest time into them, right? And so again, these are all cultural pieces. They're all leadership pieces, and they're just little small reminders, because culture is not one thing, it's everything. And so again, when we go to have conversations with people, what you were just sharing, Joe, I thought, oh, what about the wellness check, right? How we approach people is important, right? Why not start more of a wellness check first before we get into whatever the task is that they either aren't doing, or whatever happens to be the case? And how do we stay in the moment to invest more time? And we've said this before too, like when we walk down the hallway and say, hey, how you doing? They say, great. We just walk right on by, but I'm really not sure they're doing great. And if we just stayed in the moment, stayed in the conversation longer, we might find out that they're really not doing great. I think we're all programmed just to say, I'm fine, I'm great, everything's great, awesome. And, why not just slow down and say, hey, that's awesome. So tell me one great thing that happened this weekend, or tell me one great thing that's going on right now in your life that you're just really, really happy about. And let's just see if they hesitate or if they can just start rattling off, right? Because people who are doing great probably could rattle that off. So these wellness checks, and then when you said the whole idea of no, I always wonder, why did they say no, right? There's the story again. there's a reason. And if we understand that story and then that circle back to try to really see how they're doing, I think makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
I was in Michigan this week, Joe, and I was getting ready to start talking, and it was interesting to me because, first of all, they were amazing in the sense that it's cool to watch people all get there like 30 minutes before something even begins, and they're all in there already. We're not even going to start for 30 minutes, but
Yeah.
they were all like 100 miles an hour into their computers. You could just see it on their faces, right? Like they're just so stressed out already. You can see they're just trying to do 10,000 things. And, and I never do this, but I just said, hey, before we get started, will you do me a favor? Just breathe with me for a second. It was funny just watching, like, just take that stress off your shoulders. I mean, I think they're just trying to, they can't even get away from it ever.
Yeah.
It's like, when do we ever get away from it? And so that's a reminder to all of us that are on here is, how do you get away from it? And I don't know about you, but this gives me an opportunity to get away from it every weekend to start the weekend. It always starts off in a really good place because at the end of the day, we're responsible for filling our own cups, people. We can't wait for other people to come fill our cup. What are we doing to find out what brings joy to us, and who are those people you love spending time with, and just being really intentional with that. And I was just telling Keela the other day, I'm even beginning to become more intentional. And this, Joe, because you and I are reaching out right now to make a connection for a weekend, to getaway weekend. And it's just being really intentional with my family, my close friends, and those people that are in my inner circle, right? Should be my wife and kids, of just being really intentional to spend time to get away from it, but to reflect on what's really important in our lives. So anyway, that's just what
the thing that connected with me with that is like I was seeing someone talking about like buzzwords in education, and one of them that was mentioned was being intentional. And I understand where they were coming from, and I had no issue with that. But I also don't know if I believe it, because intentionality is not a buzzword. It's a process that you utilize to try to get better in whatever craft that you're in. It's not education. It's everything. I mean, think about it. If it's that whole red car mentality, you hear that red car mentality, where if somebody says to you, how many red cars did you see on your way to work today? And they're like, well, I don't know how many. Okay, well, tomorrow I'm going to give you $100 for every red car that you see on your way to work. Are you going to be more intentional about looking at red cars on your way to work? Absolutely. So it's a process that you have to utilize. And I think for me, that's been one of the biggest processes to utilize, because I wasn't intentional about a lot of the stuff that I did. I just went and flew. Well, we should probably be more intentional about this podcast. Let's be really honest, because we just fly and go. And I think part of it is the idea of reflecting, but at the same time, the intentionality of it gives it purpose, because it always brings it back to the focus that you want to, adhere to. And I think a lot of people miss out on that, because they're always just going. And we talked about it last week, that whole concept of kicking pebbles down the road and not really dealing with the big rocks that go along with it, because you feel like you're always busy because you're always doing something. But the intentionality of the purpose of what the organization is, or what you as a leader are, whatever the case may be, when you can bring yourself back to that and behave intentionally in those areas, then it gives, not only does it give more purpose to what you do, but it also makes sure that you're not flying off the handle on all of these things. And I just think we miss out on that. And I am like people's exhibit A, because I get so excited about stuff. And when I get really excited about stuff, I want everybody to know about the excited things that are the things that I'm really excited about. If I pull it back a little bit, throwing my excitement on somebody else's shoulders while they're in the midst of doing a bunch of stuff is not helping them do a bunch of stuff. And it essentially makes them believe that there's going to be something else coming up in the future that they're going to have to deal with. And so I'm overwhelming them by just being excited about something new and excited. I knew that's going to come up. So what am I doing to intentionally put myself in a situation, not only to have that move forward, but also take care of the people in terms of what they're already doing, so they don't feel like they're overwhelmed. I mean, one of the things I tell people is, and I did it last time, or maybe last year, I don't remember, when we get a break as leaders, we start thinking about how like how we're going to impact the district and all these new things that we can do to impact the district. And the example that I'd said was my staff would get really, really nervous when I went to a conference, because then all of a sudden they think I'd come back talking about how we were going to improve reading instruction by, having kids stand on their head and read with half the lights off on a wobbly chair or something like that. And so then all of a sudden, then that becomes, what's going to happen. And I tell them, like, if you come back from a break and at the first meeting you say, I read this book over break, like, you're going to need to know how to duck or run fast, because something's coming at you real quickly. Okay. Let's figure out ways that even if we have great ideas that we're really excited about, what are we doing to make sure that our excitement doesn't add to their plate?
Yeah. What's that process, right, Joe? It's funny you say it, because I just shared that this week. I said, there's been a lot of things we've talked about today. Please do not all run back to your district and try to implement all these things. Because number one, your teachers all know you're here to PD day. And you know what they're going to say? I hate when they go to PD day, because they all come back and we're all just overwhelmed with all these new things they want us to do or try. Right. Yeah. And so it goes back to the process. Like, hey, it's okay to talk about ideas or things that we learned, but what is the process to bring value and to honor the work that they've already done previously? In other words, before we initiate a change, how are we gathering information about where did this initial change come from? Who was part of that initial change? Why did we do that initial change? Because it is almost insulting when we just come in and say, well, we're going to do a new curriculum, or we're going to do a new literacy this, or new math this, or new whatever, but we have no history to where that began, why it began. I always say it's not the initiative that failed, it's the process of the initiative that failed. And so this is why we exhaust people, because we just keep quickly saying, well, that didn't work, let's go try this. No, it's not that initiative that didn't work. It's the process almost always that was ineffective. And that's what we struggle. So as you're going through that, I was just thinking about, one of the things we talk about, Joe, is, how important it is to do staff interviews and student interviews, because one of the things we're trying to do is allow us to see the culture through their eyes, so we can avoid these undercurrents, because there are things that we will not see because we move too quickly. And I said, one of my worries is you're all going to go back, and these teachers are all going to go back to their classrooms and interview these kids, and the kids are going to be walking out of school like, something's not right. Like, did you get interviewed all day today by a teacher? Did you get interviewed like, what's going on? What just happened? Right. And these kids are going to be thinking, oh my God, my teachers are weird. Right. Like that. So please don't go, just everybody go do their own thing. Right. Let's be more intentional. What's the process going to look like? What does that look like? And why are we doing this? And how are we taking voice from others to see, or first of all, to bring clarity to why we're doing it, but do we need it right now? Right.
Right.
Anyways, just kind of interesting to talk
about. And the balance of what you have to do versus what you want to do. There are some things that you have to do. And if there are things that you have to do and there are things that you want to do, and you got these two things, where my camera, like these two things, here's the interesting part about it is, if the process is different for both of those things, then people start to create or associate value to one and not the other. Right. Because if you mentioned it, the process is the biggest part of that initiative, because of how people are going to react to that process. And there are things in school that we have to do from a district standpoint, from a state standpoint, from a national standpoint, whatever the case may be. If the process to implement those things is different than the process to implement the things that people get really excited about, right, that they really want to do, now they spend more time with the stuff that they want to do and less time with the stuff that they have to do, when the stuff that they have to do is sometimes the things that we're going to get slammed for if we don't do, if that makes sense. Right. Like, so when you take a look at the process of implementation for any initiative, are the processes that you put in place similar across the board, or are they different for the things that you like to do?
Yeah. Because we can become jaded that way a little bit too, right?
And then what do we spend our time? We spend our time with that.
Yeah, the analogy I'm kind of thinking that when you said that, Joe, is like, I don't know. I've seen people do this, and I'm not so sure I didn't do it myself early on. Have you ever been in a situation where you're in an interview and you really like a candidate and you believe that this is the candidate we should hire, So when you go to do the reference check, you say, tell me a little bit what I need to know about this candidate. And they say, oh, they're great. They're awesome. We love them. I say, oh, great. Thank you so much. And then we
Yep.
just want to
Yep.
end it because I want to
Yep.
hear what I want to hear
Yep.
so I can do the next thing. So, but if I stayed longer in that conversation, I might find out that, I didn't dig deep enough. I didn't ask enough questions. Like, why are they so great? What makes them great? Give me an example when they were great. But if I want to convince myself, and when you said that, I kind of thought about that same thing, right? Like I want it to be true. I want it to happen. So I can kind of, I don't want to say manipulate because I mean that's too strong, but I certainly can finagle it a little bit if I want to. And not feel guilty about that. So anyway, but
You have one. I 100%. I've 100% done that. 100%.
I was looking at, and if I don't want them, I just keep digging. And I keep digging, right? And that's why I say all these issues, and I don't mean to say, and I have to be careful here because first of all, it's October, right?
Yeah.
Josh just reminded us it's National Principals Month. So God, thank you to all our school leaders out there, and quite frankly, district leaders and classroom leaders too. But I do think that all these things that we struggle with sometimes really come back to leadership issues. And it's not that they're principal issues or superintendent issues. They're just leadership issues in general. And it's a reminder that everybody has the capacity to lead. Now, they may be at different levels and different strains, but everybody has that capacity to lead because, even teachers who say, well, I don't. Yes, you do, because you do it every day in the classroom.
Right.
And so it's a reminder that we have to understand that everything goes back, in my opinion, to leadership. And so, again, this is why we do what we do. And it's a blessing to be on here every week. And just I just keep looking at the thread and
so cool.
What people's takeaways are from the conversation.
So I think you make a really great point when teachers say that it's the same thing in the classroom, because if you get really excited about one lesson and not excited about the other lesson, the kids that you serve in that space are going to get more excited about one lesson than they are about the other lesson. So it's just like, that's got to be something that you consider. And I have 100% done what you were talking about in the hiring process. And I think we learn from each other along the way because we want to make sure that we get the right candidate. But you have a feeling when you get into that space. So it's like you got to create well, you're probably doing it. Is that what you're doing with your hiring with your hiring seminar? I mean, just creating the frameworks that go along with it. Like, that's the kind of stuff that I think that we miss out on. So I should probably give you a plug for that. I'm not going to, but I think that the idea that if we can, I will, but we get these,
you don't know what it is, Joe.
I know.
2028 now.
We have these frameworks that if we put the frameworks in play, I think we give everybody that we serve a better chance. And to be really honest, my guess is that's what your hiring seminar is focused on.
Yeah, it's in Chicago, October 24th, 25th, coming up here in about 3.5 weeks or so. But if anybody loves Chicago, you want to come hang out with me, I'll be hanging out in Chicago for a day and a half. But it's not fair, right? Because again, I always say where do we get these courses? Like, I challenge anybody right now to tell me the course they took in leadership school that taught them how to hire. Yeah. And if I walked into your district today, again, this is just a reflection. It's not a gotcha, but it's a reflection for all of us to say, what is our process for hiring? What framework do we use for hiring? Because here's the problem. And even if we do, Joe, what I learned is in a district of whether it's 4 elementary schools or 12 elementary schools or 40 elementary schools, if we don't have a framework for these hiring processes, then that means everybody's doing the best they can. And in my opinion, what happens is we're assuming that everybody has the same skill set, and we know that isn't true. And so now we're creating more gaps and more inequities because we have no framework to hire. No one ever taught us. And we just kind of learn. And I mean, I can go on and on about this because I think it's the most important thing we do as leaders is to hire the best people. But in my experience, it's also the area in which we spend the least amount of time. If you really think about it, I bet, I'm going to challenge everybody here on the thread this morning. I bet for the most part, it's a 45-minute interview roughly. So that means between 30 and 60. I bet there's somewhere between 12 and 18 questions. I bet after we're done with that interview committee, I bet we do a reference check or two. We pick up the phone and we hire these people. That's it. And then we wonder why we struggle so much because we all know this. One oops, one mistake, one bringing the wrong person into the organization is going to create all sorts of issues for us for years to come, damage our culture, hurt children, just suck the time away from us and turn us into somebody we never want to become. Because now we're saying, oh, this person should have retired 5 years ago. Well, I still see that as a leadership issue, because my question is, how did we let this person go from here to here? I mean, we hired these people. So anyway, I get all jacked up. So you got me all jacked up, Joe. Now it's my turn. I'm going to end on a rant. You get to start the rant. Joe, it is 36 minutes. We have been awesome at ending right around 35, 36. So my friend, Joe, I want you to take this home today. But the last thing I'm going to say, and I'm going to shut up, is for National Principals Month. Thank you guys so much. Thank you all for being here for that. But here's my thing. Joe, you've said this before, so I'm just going to say it a little different, but I love your message. But I think sometimes we worry more about what we have to do than who we want to be. Mm-hmm. And take time to reflect this week on who do we really want to be, right? Yeah.
Give yourself.
Joe, I want to be an optimizer.
Yeah.
Man. I just had to do it, Joe. I just had to do it.
So, hey, I love that people love you so much that they put your fake words on t-shirts. How about that? Can we just leave it right there? Like, I mean, because it's that you gotta really like you. Like at some point, like they gotta really like you. And I think it's awesome. I really do. I'll make fun of it, but I think it's fantastic of that impact that you have with the groups. But I think one of the things that I say to every time I speak, every single time, every time I work with a group, I always start with give yourself a chance. And that's all we're asking. Give yourself a better chance tomorrow than you gave yourself today. And if you do that, if you keep giving yourself a chance, give yourself some grace at the same time, give yourself an opportunity to connect with more people and give them a chance. Now, all of a sudden, we put ourselves in a different situation, man. It is so fun. I love these. I love them. I love getting a chance to connect with you. I hope it's helpful for people outside of the two that are on this call talking right now, but we'll keep doing it because I just like talking to you. So I appreciate your time as always. I appreciate all the people that jumped in just to be here live, and we are so humbled that they're willing to do that. We hope you all have a wonderful week, and if there's ever anything we can do to help out, please do not hesitate to ask. Give yourself a chance, people. We'll talk to you soon.
Right.
Take care.
God bless everybody. Peace out.